It's like, big, it's been raining for a month.
Yeah.
I've never done that in 9 years, I've never
Long
been
time.
all the way open.
No, it was going.
Oh, well, it is what it is.
Alright, very good. Okay, at 6 o'clock, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the September meeting of the Tipp City Board of Education.
Leading us tonight in the pledge from Mrs. Wooden's class, fourth graders Peyton Hutchinson and Emma Bethel will be leading us. Students. Go ahead.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, students.
You may be excused, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is to call the roll.
Mr. Bennett. Mrs. Heather.
Here.
Mr. Crawl.
Here.
Mrs. Dunaway.
Here.
Mr. Bennett. Present. All present and accounted for, sir.
Thank you, thank you. Next item, number 2, committee reports. We have a written report from Russ Gilmore, our representative at CTC Center. Does anybody have any questions, or I guess he's not here to answer any questions, but if you have any comments or.
So I guess my only comment would be for somebody that wanted these minutes, can they get on the board docs and that's how they can view them?
Right,
Everybody
that's, yeah, they're attached to the board agenda.
Okay,
And they can review those. He'll be here in person next month.
he does such a nice
Yeah.
Oh my
report.
gosh, so detailed, it's like being at the meeting, it's
Mhm.
fabulous.
It's really great.
So we certainly appreciate his update. If there's no other discussion, we'll proceed on to number 3, superintendent and assistant superintendent's reports.
All right, first I wanted to just acknowledge Jenny that's here this evening, Jenny Shang. Jenny, would you like to introduce yourself? She's going to be in the agenda a little bit later as someone that will be having hopefully a resolution for Nevin Coffey.
I'm Jenny Shank. I've lived in Tipp here about 13 years. I'm married with 2 children. I have a high schooler who just graduated last year, one that is a freshman this year, and I have worked in the cafeteria previously before as a sub, and I'm looking forward to be there full time.
Thank you, Jenny.
You're welcome.
And you may be excused. I appreciate you coming this evening so they have a face with a name.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next thing I'd like just to say is that we did have a fantastic pep rally last Friday, and ultimately I really want to thank the whole community. Tipp City Police, they were fantastic in helping our students that did walk from their buildings to the stadium to have safe travel. Our bus drivers were fantastic in having that extra step of getting our students that were bused over to the stadium, and then all of our students and staff. The students were great. The Student Senate did a great job working with the children and having a number of relay races and just a great rally experience. So it's very special for our district. We're a smaller district, and the opportunity to do this is great to have all of us together at one time and really connecting. So I want to thank everybody for making that such a success. The next item really is about our emergency levy renewal. And Mr. Stevens, I don't want to throw you for a loop, but are you able to do that attachment and put it up? If not, I do have.
Oh, I don't have control of that computer.
Okay, we'll just do these hard copies, that's fine. So, at our last meeting together, we discussed the importance of having a plan as we move forward, and so we did create one for both the emergency levy renewal that will be on our November ballot, and as well as for the facility one that we'll talk about in just a little bit. You'll see a number of headings, anywhere from meetings and ballot funding deadlines, including internal staff outreach, our direct mail outreach, website, social media, newspaper outreach, our speakers bureau, as well as event announcements. And so that's what we have compiled for the November one, and actually have begun that. have made contact with Mrs. Junker and DCEA at this time, as you can see, for some internal work. You can also see as we, it's broken down week by week, but we have done a presentation at Rotary this last week. And we will be, during the week of October 6th through 12th, going out to our staff and begin talking with our staff directly about this as well. You'll see with the direct mailings that our quality profile will have some information specific about the November issue. I know that you've received this via email and as a Friday board update, as well as in the board docs. Any questions on the November one for 2019? We did not include a column that would be actually for the levy campaign. We decided that we would keep that separate, but that they will have their own timelines and events. And I know that at this time we do have a co-chair team.
Okay. Any comments, questions?
It does say draft, so we are open to suggestions.
Sure.
All right, so then I'll move on to the next one. The next one, and which I'll pass out as well, just for your convenience. The next one is for the emergency levy excuse me, wrong thing. The next one is for our facilities, and it is for November of 2020. There was a lot of discussion at our last meeting about when we might really go back to the ballot for facilities. As we were really developing our master plan and looking at the timelines, we did develop for March and worked at that, but as we got into that and we were doing things corresponding of what would apply for the November ballot, it really seemed that the presidential election with the stronger turnout, being able to do a full-scale professional research survey and utilize that information to guide us as voters, that seemed to be a very good direction. It does seem important as well that we know that we will be anticipating some changes on the board, and having our new board fully engaged in part of that decision-making seemed to be a very good step as well. So on this one, once again, we start as early as September. This one has a couple of additional columns in this, which would include our community engagement outreach looks a little bit different. We have a column of that, but this one we have many more, including building tours and things of that nature as we move along. And then we have also the core team that we do not have one, of course, with a renewal levy. So we have core team that is a column that we will place dates in that as soon as we have more specifics, as well as we actually added a column that was Board of Education members of areas in particular timeframes as they would see things that are occurring across the plan that they might particularly want to be able to engage in. And also that the aspect of, as we look at that might help with planning if an individual needed to, say, take an afternoon off of work or an evening event so that they could plan forward for that. There had been some discussion on the side that either a column or a separate document that might include specific task dates, that might be a helpful piece. In some ways, an additional column to keep it one cohesive document might be helpful. Another way, sometimes just having a document that are specific dates that are key, whether that is when our special needs determination is made, and then we work off of that. certainly when, first and second readings, timelines of when those need to occur. We do have under the meeting ballot and the funding deadlines, we have added some of that. So we do know when there's, I believe it's July 6th is when a decision will need to be made for, and including a second reading for November.
Do you have like a person that's heading up each of these bolded categories, each of these columns? Do you have like a point person that?
We do not, and as a committee, just as our administrative facilities committee, certainly there are areas, and when I look at, for example, both the social media as well as some of our publications when we were looking at newspaper, that sort of thing, we would think like social media, that would be strongly Mr. Segonin, the director of our technology, but Mrs. Robbins is very involved with that, and so they would work more closely with that. Lots of times we will meet and decide about what would be big pieces or specific information we want to be pushing out at that time. Certainly mailings, that will be a combined effort as well. If we're doing one that's a little bit more in finance, at that time we'll lean more heavily on the treasurer to help provide data to put in that. If it's some other aspect that might be more facility related, Mr. Pfister's going to be very helpful with that. Community engagement, we all were on board on that. It will partly depend on who happens to be the presenter for the specific presentation, but certainly, yes. Some of these will be a little bit interchangeable. A few of them will be individuals that will just naturally gravitate to that.
Greta, I do want to make a correction. July 6th is the deadline to pass the resolution requesting special needs. We still don't have to do the two resolutions until August 5th.
Right.
Well, thank you. And then you'll notice as you compare the November versus November of 2019 versus 2020, that, for example, the Speakers Bureau, we will be going back to those groups and filling that in, but that's not really developed just yet. The one for November, we're really starting to get that filled in.
Do you have a kind of a target date to know sort of what the specific plan would be? I mean, whether it's sticking with what we had before or going to something else?
Well, we did discuss that, and ultimately I think that our survey that we'll be conducting will be a very pivotal piece regarding that, taking that information and really seeing what the voters are willing to support, what they feel is important. So I think that we do have a date in May for the one that would be the 11/2020. May of 2020 is the time frame that we were hoping that late April we would have that concluded. We would begin having direct workstations and informations to our board, and then we would move toward really developing some of those strong conversations about what would be the decision and where, as both a district that we would be recommending and as a board, what you would want to have on the ballot. The survey, you'll probably notice that the idea is to have the survey potentially beginning as early as December 1st, it may be early January, but in that time frame, so that we are able to have that completely concluded, March and April, and then move into really getting information out before people dismiss for summer, but certainly as a board, and then moving to the community with that.
Any other questions or comments? Anyone? All right. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and proceed with item C.
Thank you very much. And at this time, Mr. Bierhaus is going to be talking with you about our state report card and then some other information that we've just recently received. And that would be regarding our special education and our rating.
So earlier this month, state report cards came out. And as I shared with the district staff last week, there are several things to celebrate with the state report card, and there's also some things to learn from the state report card. For those who aren't aware, the report card is comprised of 6 components, and you can see the grades that we received in each of those components. And maybe it's not as clear on this screen right now, but in the handout that you have there in front of you, the 6 components are achievement, progress, gap closing, graduation rate, improving at-risk K-3 readers, and then prepared for success. Now, when you look at achievement, that ranks our achievement on state assessment. So that looks at each of the assessments from grades 3 through 12 and looks at whether or not we met that 80% benchmark on each of those assessments. The progress grade measures how much growth students are showing. So growth and achievement are 2 different things. And the way I kind of explain that to teachers is that you take every kid in the state of Ohio, you line them up in a line, and we want our kids to either keep their place in line or move forward in line, and that's growth. And achievement means that they met a certain benchmark. Gap closing is also a growth component, and that measures how we're doing with improving our most vulnerable students in math, English, and English language proficiency. Graduation rate, that's pretty self-explanatory there. Same with improving at-risk reading. Prepared for success is something that we may not be as familiar with, and basically that's measuring how well our students are prepared for college and career when they move on beyond the walls of Tipp High School and go out into the real world. So if we look at comparisons and how we compared in Miami County and across the state, we were one of 2 school districts in Miami County to earn a B. There were no A's in Miami County. You look a little bit further into that, we had the highest grades in the county in graduation rate, gap closing, and then also in prepared for success. You might say, well, prepared for success was a C. Well, as we look down here across the state, there were only 98 school districts in the whole state of Ohio who had a C or better on prepared for success. So looking at other markers across the state and the county, we were second in the county in performance index. Across the state of Ohio, we ranked 118th out of 608 school districts in terms of performance index. And if you aren't familiar with what performance index is, that means achievement on state assessments. And not just whether or not the student was proficient, but whether they were accelerated or advanced plus. So those are things that we're going to continue to look at. How can we advance that performance index and move even higher into that top third in the state in terms of performance index? As I said before, we received a B overall. There were only 200 school districts in the state of Ohio who earned a B or better. As Dr. Kampf mentioned, last week we received our special education rating. We received a rating of meets requirements, which when you hear that rating, you probably think, okay, but that is the highest rating you can receive for special education. So that's a good thing. And when you look at our scores, we had a perfect score in compliance, we had a perfect score in performance, and that overall rating then comes out to meets requirements. This is based on 17-18 data, and our 18-19 data will come out about this time next fall. So they're even further behind than state assessments are in terms of, we always joke it's a year in the rear. They're 2 years in the rear with special education and getting those ratings out to us. So, as I said, there's a lot to learn from both reports. There's a lot of improvements and areas for growth, but as I told the Rotary Club on last Wednesday, you can't eat an elephant in one bite. So we need to target specific areas for growth. And one of those areas that we want to look at is improving our at-risk K-3 reading. So Mrs. Smith and I have already talked about how we're going to do that. We're looking at other districts who have better grades than us and seeing what they're doing with their EMIS reporting, looking at what they're doing with their assessments, What are some ways that we can continue to inch that bar up a little bit higher there with improvements in K-3 reading? With the performance index and state assessments, that would be that achievement component that we also got a C on. Looking more at what subject areas we need to focus on. And right now, you know, from what I've gathered and talking with the building principals, math is an area that we need to focus on. And working, you know, from the middle on up and really building a stronger foundation so that we're prepared for that success and that achievement when they get to the high school. Exploring college and career opportunities, I think we're doing a great job with that already, but we're going to continue to look at ways of how we can improve that prepare for success score. I met with Sinclair this afternoon to talk about how we can explore more CCP pathways. We're looking at one possibly in pre-engineering and one in teacher education. We would be able to go through their transfer program. So basically Sinclair has a 2-year associate's degree that allows students to transfer then to a 4-year program. And we would look at probably trying to incorporate 15 to 30 credit hours over the 4 years that students would be at the high school. Mr. Zink was meeting with principals in the area today about the job readiness seal, which is going to be a component of the graduation pathways. One of the ways that students can meet the graduation pathways. So we're looking at a lot of different areas that we can work on that component of the grade card and try and get us up there into that A and B range. The board has a handout. Are there any questions off of the information I just presented there?
On the preparing for success part, how do they score that? I mean, is that take into consideration the program that we have with UC and Sinclair already? I mean, is that factored in somewhere? How do we get credit for that in that score?
Right, so it's not factored in yet because it looks at
Right.
the current graduating class. So this is all data based on the class of 2019, and they haven't participated in that yet. And really, we aren't reaping the full benefits of our AP program either yet with the expansions that we made there. Basically, when they calculate their college and career readiness score, they look at the number of students who take the ACT outside of the state mandated ACT. They're looking at what their scores were on the ACT. Are they remediation free? They're looking at SAT, AP classes, CCP, and then they put basically a score on each kid. And for every AP test that's a 3 or above, you get kind of a bonus point. And that increases that score then for prepared for success.
So the district recently participated in a curriculum audit, and the results were shared, and there was some collaboration with teaching staff to talk about the gap and how to apply information from that audit. Is it consistent with the report card?
It's consistent. The things that we were hearing in that audit and the teacher perception surveys that came back from that audit talked a lot about needing time for collaboration. And so we're looking at that for our professional development day on October 18th and finding times for teams to meet, grade level teams, and looking at horizontal and vertically and making sure that we're meeting curriculum across the board there. The other thing that we picked up on from that curriculum audit was writing across the curriculum and content literacy. So we're exploring ways that how we can improve that. In fact, with the social studies curriculum group, we've talked already about a couple of different avenues that we may want to go to look at how we can improve content literacy within social studies, and maybe that's a starting point, and then we grow that from there into the other content areas.
I just want to add that when we get a B overall, we've talked about both the special ed, our direction that we're headed with, goals of what our focus is. There is a lot that goes into that, and as a district, we are very proud of that. And we always want to have more. We would like to be one of those that had the A, but we know that there was a lot of effort and a lot of goodness that is in that B. So we are very proud of that. We're proud to be one of the 2 in Miami County.
Yeah, I think, just to piggyback on that, if you're talking about glows and grows, I mean, our special ed data was, I think, particularly just really outstanding. When you talk about where the state averages and where our students score, I mean, the gap is just huge. I mean, I just think that really shows, I mean, you can't just do that in one grade and have those kind of, I mean, that's a whole program that is built to really ensure that those students are having academic success in the classroom. I thought that was really, I just think it's really meaningful.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the bright spots.
But there's caution with the report card, because there's so many factors that are not measured and good things happening in our district.
Sure. And you'll be hearing more about those in the quality profile that comes out later this fall. But you're right, there is so much more that goes into our school district each and every day, and so much that our staff pours into our students each and every day that doesn't get measured by a report card.
So you reported there was only 200 with a B overall. Was that 200 and above? Or I mean, how many A's were given out?
I'd have to go back and look, Mr. Span. I think there was something, I want to say, for some reason, the number 39 sticks out in my mind. 39 A's throughout the state.
I believe the only school in this area that got an A was Oakwood,
good, yeah, that's what
Yeah.
in the Miami Valley area.
So, yes, that was the point to the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, but far and few. We want to be one of those, but we are proud of our B.
And I think what we've done is we've targeted some areas where we see where we can make that grow.
And actually kind of on the teetering edge there with several of them,
Mhm.
because we have made some great strides. We're just not quite into that next level.
Okay.
All right? Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to compliment Mr. Veerhoff. He's doing a great job, and he's having some good building meetings with administrators as really looking at the data from the report card, the data that they have as, you know, as buildings, and how to build off of that and focus their attention for improvement.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is citizens' comments. We have Mr. Don Watson here this evening.
I'll use a term that Corinne used, piggyback. Appreciate this weekend. I had a fantastic weekend at a school conference in Chicago, and your 3 points was kind of related to the 3 points that we focused on, and that was personnel development, professional readiness, and preparing for lives of service. So I appreciate your time on your report.
Right.
Another thing I want to talk about tonight, most of you know that I get excited about history. I can connect that to people in town since I turned the big 7-0. I appreciate people that I know, have known, but one big chunk we're going to miss is Gordon Pittenger. I just mentioned that because he was a good friend of mine and he passed recently, and he was a great proponent of schools and attended Tipp City. I think he was from the class of 1955. A point, Corinne, I know you the least, so a point that I usually bring out is history, like I said, but also truth, and what truth has in our lives, and you know, that we always need to tell the truth. And I appreciate your spirit in the last board meetings. But I'm taking my thoughts is on out of the paper that you wanted to kind of hurry up and do the building project in March. And I would just tell you my opinion is, my father always told me, take your time to make important decisions. And I can pass that on to you. Now that I turned 70, I'm an elder.
Thank you.
You need to change your mind.
Other things I want to mention was in 1976, we brought a property from the Copics, Audrey Copic, at a bargain price of $2,500 to build a school. I was on the committee in the late 90s, and we tried a bond issue twice for a high school. And then in this room, around these tables, Mr. Jim Daniels, Dr. Jim Daniels, called me in because he knew that I was into real estate, and told me to find some land that was the furthest away from the Copic property, because Emory is putting in a new runway with a possible 500 planes coming off the end of the runway at that place. Well, sadly to say, we haven't been hearing the truth. It wasn't because the interstate was on the other side of the interstate. The reason it failed is because Emory was putting in a new runway. And so I got papers, showed him here, plat maps and stuff of, that's why the high school is where it is. I hear a lot of talk, why did we go to Troy to build a high school? Well, it's because the Emory, and now they're out of business. There's 3 large plants built where the runway was, so that's history. And there's more people on that side of the interstate now than there is on this side of the interstate. And for the next 50 years, we've been showing that Kessler-Colesville is the main street of the future Tipp City, and that's where Rosewood is, and the flight's approaching over Windmere, and what's the new one?
Cedar.
No, the one that,
Abbott.
I can't think of it right now, but
Cedar Grove. Yeah,
Cedar
Cedar
Grove.
Grove, that's it.
anyway, the planes are coming right down over that now, so it's gonna be to the north. The next thing I ran for the school board in 2016, and since then I've been told that the best way to affect the community is not on the school board, because from the outside you can get more people to back my philosophy than you can to be on a board that doesn't hear the truth. And the truth, I think, is, fortunately, we are going to have new board members. I've been in contact with the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, and Steve Huffman. They informed me of illegal petitions, so instead of taking their word, I go to the Board of Elections, which is all public knowledge, and see that something I witnessed was false. And so what they told me, the Attorney General, is a felony occurs when it is committed and occurred, not later than that point. I don't know if you can back me up there, Andy, being an attorney, or...
Not to put you on the spot.
Well, I don't wanna get into that, Don,
He's
I
not working
appreciate the
with
comment, but yeah, I charge for that legal advice.
Well,
Do you have any money?
we're not supposed, the reason I said your name was because I think we okayed to spend $20,000 for a survey when we can get dialogue here free. And so I can appreciate you didn't answer my question, because we don't have dialogue here. We have two sides, and we're willing to spend $20,000 to go to get a big survey. I show up at Scorpion meetings But as you notice, there's not many other people from the taxpayers that show up. And so, why is that? That's a question I'd put on your survey. Why don't you come? Because they don't have a dialogue. So, in closing, I told Mr. Borchers he can't be here. He's takes care of his wife 24/7, so I have a handout from him. He's been here before, but now he's not able. And well, thank you.
Okay. Are you gonna pass out the handout?
Yeah, I'll give it to you.
All right. Just for the record, I'll let you go way over the 5 minutes,
That did seem long, I was wondering about that.
just so you know.
I just sat here patiently like, hey, what?
I'll get a five-minute hourglass so we can sit right here and everybody.
You can bring that at
Dave's got a
Christmas,
little
that can be the
timer.
board's Christmas gift. That'd be a Christmas gift. But this is from Mr. Borchers, just to be, this handout, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Midwest.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. I'm gonna move on then to President's comments. As usual, I don't have much to say. I did want to note, though, Joellen informed me and I confirmed, and I wanted to, on behalf of the board, extend our condolences to the Centerville School District. It's my understanding that their treasurer passed away today, tragically. His name was Mitch Biederman. So we did want to extend, or, on behalf of the board, I'm sure everyone would agree, to extend our condolences to him and his family and to that school district. I'm sure this is a very difficult day for them, so certainly keep them in our thoughts and prayers. So I wanted to make note of that. Beyond that, I guess we're ready then for item 6, the approval of prior minutes.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded, I'll just formally say to her, I assume, yeah, Dunaway and Dahl to approve the August 26th and September 9th minutes. Any discussion on that? All right, hearing no discussion, we're ready for a vote.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Spano,
Yes.
Ventures.
Yes, that motion is approved. And then moving on to the treasurer's report. Item A, would entertain a motion to approve the financial report for August of 2019.
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded, Sam and Joellen. Any discussion?
Just one item of note, if you, on the page that discusses all of the variances between the 3 years, when it comes to, let me pull that up really quick, just so I'm saying everything properly. For the section that discusses unrestricted grants and aid revenue, it should say for August 2019 as the first date. It was originally, it said 2018, it should be 2019. 2019 was 838,000 more in August of this year because of homestead and rollback revenues. Thank you to Sam for pointing that out. Any other questions or concerns that I might be able to discuss?
No, that's good job, as usual.
I will just add that 2 months in, we're hitting our targets and things look good so far.
Okay, if there's no further questions, we're ready for a vote.
Spano,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Ventures.
Yes, that motion is approved. Next, the fiscal year 20 permanent appropriations. Entertain a motion to approve those.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Joellen and Sam. And now any discussion?
I'll just note that these are our permanent appropriations for the fiscal year. If you recall, we originally approved temporary appropriations in June. We've done some amendments over the past few months, but we are legally required to pass permanent appropriations, so we've called these permanent. The largest issues you will see on this is we have added the activity for Fund 24, which is our self-insured activity. This includes revenues that are going to be received from the employees for their premiums, and also the board's portions from the 001 fund and other funds, 006 and such, will be paid into the 024 fund for disbursement as invoiced by UMR, a third-party company. So those are the budgets that we're hoping to see this year. Hopefully things stay within those budgets and the claims and such don't get out of hand. Again, as I mentioned a few months back, that if they do go above that dollar amount, we will do an advance from the general fund to the 024 fund and then adjust rates as necessary. So, other than that, we had a small local grant come in, and we've got some more athletic budgets that have been submitted for approval.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, we're ready for a vote on that item.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Spano,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Ventures.
Yes, that motion is approved. Moving on, approval of the ORC 570541 purchase order certifications, then and now fiscal year 20 for August 2019.
Make the motion.
Second?
Moved and seconded, Sam and Teresa. Any discussion?
Just know we had two items on there. One was a renewal, which you just kind of get the invoice, you don't know when you're gonna get it, but I don't really consider those in and outs, but we do it to cover ourselves with the auditors.
Sure.
The other was an attorney invoice that was for the work that was done by Bricker and Eckler with the OFCC. And the PO had been exhausted as of May, and then the June invoice came in. We just didn't put one in place, so that truly is the then and now right there.
Okay. All right. No further discussion. We're ready for a vote.
Spano,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Ventures.
Yes, that motion is approved. Okay, item D, credit card rewards report for fiscal year 2019.
I'll move.
Second?
Moved and seconded to approve that. Corinne and Teresa, any discussion?
Just to note, this is a new requirement that was added to our credit card policy in November of 2018 due to recommendations from the state that just wanted to make sure the boards were aware of what was being done with credit card reward points. We have always used our points for the wellness fund, and so the report that is attached shows the purchases and points earned, and then the redemption of those points for our wellness fund account. Just a note that's already noted in there, but just to say it out loud, Chase did discontinue all credit card points because of what the state put out, and so they just canceled that for all government entities. I am currently looking for another credit card to use because that's money to help fund our wellness program.
That's good.
Right.
I will be looking at Unity and some of the other local banks in the area to see what cards they have available for us.
Sure.
Oh, don't forget Greenville Federal, that you think?
Yep.
Yeah, they're good.
You listening to them?
Cause they give back a lot, they have like a boosters card and stuff for fundraising. I know
yeah.
they do a lot with credit cards and fundraising and that kind of
Yeah.
type of thing. That's all.
I'll be trying to find the one that gives us the most. We're
Absolutely.
doing what we do every day.
Right,
Yep.
okay. Ready for a vote on that topic?
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Spano,
Yes.
Ventures.
Yes, that motion is approved. Item E, approval of a new fund. This would be a motion to approve, for approval to establish a new fund, Fund 467, Student Wellness and Success Funds to account for new student wellness and success funding received from the state of Ohio under House Bill 166.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
It's a popular one. Moved and seconded, Joellen and Sam.
And since we already approved the appropriations for that fund, I
No,
guess.
no, no, the 467's not in there yet.
Oh, 467's not in there.
This is wellness.
Yeah.
Oh, this is
The
well,
health
the
insurance.
new wellness, okay.
This is from the governor.
The one that just came out, we talked about the last board meeting,
Yeah.
the state money.
Be 110,000, I believe, so. And again, it doesn't have to be spent all in one year, it can be carried over. And this can be used for programs that we've already looked into establishing anyway.
All right, very good. If there's no other discussion, we're ready for a vote.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Spano,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Ventures.
Yes, that motion is approved. All right, that concludes the treasurer's report. We do have an item of old business, update on comprehensive job and salary review. I'll turn this over to Dr. Jones. Do you have information on
Yes,
this?
we do, and we have a handout.
It's the handout that you've seen previously, only this time we did receive Patel's quote for their services. It was in line with what we had estimated previous handout.
You do a work session?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
I think we estimated 45 to 50,000.
Correct.
I didn't have any pass out.
And so we have heard now from Patel, and they have provided us with information and their availability. They would project that they would begin in January. Richardson, which is another company that we have looked at closely, indicated that they could start mid-October. We will see that there's a different number of personnel that will be handling it. I did go back and do some looking because I was really kind of wondering why we would have seen such an increase from the last time that we really had some communications with Patel, because they are a very strong group and they do excellent work. And after looking just a little bit further, the salary study as well as the redesign with that was not in our earlier portion. So that's one of the reasons that we do see a step up in that cost. But what we do see is that it's in a line with Richardson that is providing a similar type service. Right now, and I'll speak in Mr. Stevens, if you need to add anything, please do so. Patel is one that we do seem to be very interested in.
And I believe that Dr. Teresa and Corinne both indicated that they've had previous dealings with Patel.
No, I'm the board member that found this. I took
Okay.
this class at Capitol Conference,
Okay.
and then we started that discussion that kind of died and went nowhere.
I went to Patel for trainings.
Gotcha. And you yes, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we would like to bring this forward for the October meeting
Okay.
as a resolution, so we could actually get started and be moving forward with it. And any comments or additional discussion this evening or in the future before we get to October about, things that we should consider as we move forward, let us know.
Do we know the steps they're gonna go through to do this? I mean, are they gonna be interviewing all the staff?
You do.
So, yes, that's the piece that we really
Individually
like.
too, which is
And,
great.
and we pushed pretty hard for that we wanted that piece, for them to actually come on site. And, so that's one of the reasons it takes more months, about the same amount through Richardson, but you can see there's not as many people working with that. But that, we said that is a piece that we need. Battelle naturally does this. This is part of their natural protocol. And, we think that's an important piece.
Okay.
Do you think Patel could indicate any other districts that they've worked with and provided the same service? Maybe see what other districts have, was it beneficial? Did they get the outcome that they were looking for? Was the process a hindrance or to the district's operation?
need information just to bring to October?
Sure,
To the
yeah,
October
I mean, this is a,
I
this
put
is
that
an
on the Friday
investment.
board update, sure.
I think there's some concerns about investing in this and moving forward in it, whether it be something should be handled within the district or outside the district. And yeah, obviously, there's a difference in the timing of when these services could start, so.
Sure.
Wondering what sort of information, the board would need to endorse this.
Right. Okay. All right, if there's no further discussion, everybody good?
Sorry.
We'll move on to item 9, new business.
Goodness
You know,
sakes.
I'll turn it back over to Dr. Combs for that.
All right, item 9, number A, or letter A, let's start with approval to accept the following retirement. That's Gail Portal at Nevin Copic as a librarian, effective at the close of the day, December 20th, 2019.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Moved and seconded, Sam and Teresa. Any discussion?
How long has she been with our district?
I would say that's probably been about 16 years. She came when I was at Nevin Copic still, so, and I've been here a few years, so,
Done a great job for us.
Yeah.
yeah.
Is that any relation to Mr. Porto of the high school?
Yes.
It's his mother.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Oh, I love that. That's great. Oh. Alrighty.
All right. There's no further discussion? We're ready for a vote?
That's so awesome.
Spano,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes?
Dahl,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Ventures.
Yes, that motion is approved.
And I want to think back, I actually think Mrs. Portal indicated to me, I think that she would meet her 20th year. So I'll have to think whether she had maybe been here earlier in, or if she had been at another district, but I think she has 20 years.
I just think that's great.
Be
All
nice
right.
to invite her back for the end of the year.
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Item B,
She's ready.
educational upgrades. Approval of the following educational upgrades retroactive back to the beginning of the 2019-2020 contract start, and that as per the agenda.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Moved and seconded, Sam and Corinne. Any discussion? Hearing none, we're ready for a vote?
Spano,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Ventures.
Yes, that motion is approved.
Item C, recommend approval for the 2018, yeah, I'm trying to think whether that should be, but it is a year behind, so that's why I was taking a second look on that. Approval of the 2018-19 tuition reimbursement request based on transcripts and proof of payment received.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Moved and seconded, Teresa and Corinne. Any discussion?
I just want to mention that it's $60 per semester hour or $40 per quarter hour, and it's a maximum of $240 per person. We do have a great group that's going through a cohort right now, in addition to those that are just seeking additional professional development. So this is a great list this evening.
Good. Okay, hearing no further discussion, we're ready for a vote?
Dunaway,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Spano,
Yes.
Ventures.
Yes, that motion is approved.
Item D, approval to employ the following as classified staff for the 2019-2020 school year, pending proper certification and paperwork. And that's Jenny Shank, lunchroom personnel at Nevin Copic, step 0, effective September 24th, 2019.
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Moved and seconded, Joellen and Teresa. Any discussion? Hearing none, we're ready for a vote?
Heatherly,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Spano,
Yes.
Ventures.
Yes, that motion is approved.
Item E, approval of the following supplemental winter coaching positions and Project More supplemental positions for the 2019-2020 school year, pending verification of proper certification and paperwork.
Make the motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Sam and Corinne. Any discussion?
My only question is, the Project More, they're not, since this is our first year, I guess I expected to see everybody at the same level with the same, step. But there's some that aren't, is there a reason why they're not all the same?
If you want to take it does make a difference. We do have different people that have moved in and out of that role, and so we do have
So
several.
Project More, is this our
As
first?
far as, this is like their I'll call it like a building coordinator position.
Uh-huh. Oh, I thought this isn't the first year we're paying for it? Is there something else I'm thinking of?
Probably, yeah.
Okay,
Might be thinking of Wind Crew.
maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've done Project More for a number of years.
Okay.
And I'll just give
All
you.
those acronyms, alphabets.
I don't know why you're confused, because we're always looking for volunteers.
Is
Yes,
that-
we are.
That's what
Okay.
you're thinking,
Okay.
so you're going, why are we paying now? Because it used to always, that's what we do have
Okay.
volunteers that come in also, parents and stuff.
Okay.
Parents, yeah.
Okay.
I know,
Yeah.
I know in one building, for example, we have a teacher that's on maternity leave this year.
Oh,
So that's why we have a new person that's stepping in.
got it.
But the program is still very well and strong.
Yeah, it looks like it.
All the high school updates, looking for volunteers, so that's like,
Maybe that's not.
it is.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, we're ready for a vote.
Spano.
Yes.
Dahl.
Yes.
Dunaway.
Yes.
Heatherly.
Yes.
Ventures.
Yes, that motion is approved.
Item F, recommend approval to change following contracts as per the agenda.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Teresa and Sam. Any discussion? All right. Going once, going twice?
These look like just adjustments, right?
Yes,
Yes.
it's due to student needs.
Sure.
Okay, I think we're ready for a vote.
Dunaway.
Yes.
Spano.
Yes.
Dahl.
Yes.
Heatherly.
Yes.
Ventures.
Yes, that motion is approved.
Item G, recommend approval to change the following stipends as per the agenda.
I'll move.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Corinne and Teresa. Any discussion?
And as you see in these two cases, that each of these staff members took on an additional student, additional colleague to mentor.
Okay, very good, I think we're ready for a vote.
Dahl.
Yes.
Dunaway.
Yes.
Heatherly.
Yes.
Spano.
Yes.
Ventures.
Yes, that motion is approved.
Item H, recommend approval to add a full-time 8-hour nurse aide at LT Ball Intermediate for student support for the 2019-2020 school year.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded, Joellen and Sam. Any discussion?
So this is the action based on the presentation from last month?
Correct.
Okay, you ready for a vote?
Heatherly.
Yes.
Spano.
Yes.
Dahl.
Yes.
Dunaway.
Yes.
Ventures.
Yes, that motion is approved.
Item H, recommend approval of the following game workers for the 2019-2020 school year.
It's actually item I.
Yeah, item I.
Item I, excuse me, thank you.
You're right.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded, Sam and Joellen. Any discussion?
I have a little bit to say. This reminds me of exactly what happened with Stagecrafters. I don't know, I guess shame on me, because I've never had to ask this before, but I don't know the process of how a person becomes a game worker. But at some point along that process, which I don't know what it is, I feel like we should go back to our core values of be responsible, be respectful, have integrity. And if any of those things don't get a check mark in the box, then to me that isn't probably the best fit to have as a game worker representing Tipp City Schools. So that would be my only comment.
Okay. Any other comments, concerns, questions?
I did do some inquiring, and I'll just respond in that, as students do make mistakes and they do have consequence, that we do try to provide opportunities with support, to help them get down a positive path. Mr. Tackett said that he would be monitoring these students, and this would be an after-game situation where they would actually be helping to clean up the stadium area in this aspect. So I do hear what Mrs. Dunaway is saying. But I do think that after conversations that this may be an opportunity for a student.
So these are current students.
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, we're ready for a vote.
But before you have the vote, I want to just say, they are current students. One is outside our district. And Mr. Zirkle, of course, is also a staff member.
Sure.
So with the exception of Mr. Zirkle, the rest are minors?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right. Hearing none, we're ready for a vote.
One moment.
Wow, there's some spelling errors in there.
On these names?
No,
Oh,
me
that's fine.
typing.
Oh, I didn't see them. Of course, I don't know everybody personally, but.
Spano. Yes. Dunaway.
No.
Dahl.
Yes.
Heatherly.
Yes.
Ventures.
Yes. That motion is approved.
Item J, recommend approval to employ the following substitute positions for the 2019-2020 school year pending proper certification and paperwork.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Moved in second. Teresa and Corinne. Any discussion? Hearing none, we're ready for a vote.
Dunaway.
Yes.
Dahl.
Yes.
Heatherly.
Yes.
Spano.
Yes.
Ventures.
Yes, that motion is approved.
Item K, recommend approval of the following overnight and out-of-state trips as per the agenda.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded, Sam and Joellen. Any discussion?
Well, I've already reached out to Dr. Kump with my concerns regarding this trip, so.
Fair enough. Anything else?
I have a question about the scrimmage and the overnight stay. Is it looks like it's just a Cincinnati, is what reasoning for that?
I
Yeah,
did,
I had the same question actually, because I drive back and forth every single day to Cincinnati for baseball.
so I did reach out to Mr. Kramer, and he can add any comment that he'd like, but he indicated that one was in the evening and then one was the very next day in the morning. And so that's the reason for this particular request.
So they're doing some type of scrimmage tournament down there where they're gonna play back-to-back days with
My understanding is that they're going to scrimmage somewhere on one evening. Like to go out and have a team dinner, a little team activity that evening, and then scrimmage somewhere different the following morning. And so they felt like an overnight would be the best way to do that.
They have an overnight coming up a month later. That seems like team bonding.
Okay. No further.
I would ask though, is there a precedent of, do we limit how many out of state or out of town travel that we, that other teams do? In my tenure here, we've only.
Right,
There's
the
only been a
baseball.
few teams and
The
a few
baseball team
activities,
is-
and we don't provide multiple, so are you saying baseball's the only one?
Well, the baseball always traditionally goes, because you can't practice baseball in Ohio in the winter. So every spring break, they go to Florida to train, to be outside. It's freezing back here, snow, frozen ground. you know, what have you. But other than that, the basketball would be the first, to my knowledge, to then piggyback on the baseball kind of tradition.
There's other
Did I
groups
answer your
that,
question? Sorry.
no, I think
Okay.
what I'm asking is, do we have a precedent or is it part of our policy of how often teams are permitted to do this?
No.
So we've had cross-country go to Tennessee or to Kentucky, we've had the softball team go to Gatlinburg, we've had the
I
band
think
go
Quiz
to.
Bowl's gone
Yeah.
two times in a
Okay.
year. I mean, I
Correct.
think they've had a couple meets through two different locations where they've had two
overnights.
two separate overnight
Okay,
stays.
that's,
Mhm.
so then we do have a precedent of that, we probably don't have anything that limits it, so,
Yeah, to my knowledge, we don't.
okay, just curious.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we're ready for a vote.
Spano,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
No.
Ventures.
Yes, that motion is approved.
Item L. Mr. Kramer, if you'd like to be excused, you may. I know there's a volleyball game going on right now. Thanks for being here. Item L, recommend approval to update the fiscal year 20 athletic service pay rates for the site supervisors and staff doing two jobs at once.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Oh, go, you go.
Jinx,
James.
You owe me a Coke.
who's taking it?
We'll give it to
Dahl.
Corinne.
Yep.
Moved and seconded, Sam and Corinne. Any discussion?
We should start arm wrestling. The meetings would be a lot more fun.
We don't have time.
True.
I think we're ready for a vote.
Spano,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Ventures.
Yes,
Thank you
that
very much.
motion is approved.
Item N, recommend approval of resolutions declaring transportation impractical as per the agenda.
Make the motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Sam and Corinne. Any discussion?
So anytime a student is accepted to like a Stivers or one of these, does Tipp City therefore required to provide transportation or this in lieu of?
So, they do a study and they decide whether it is deemed impractical. And part of that is, there's a whole formula about the cost that's related to and the number that they're transporting. But then, yes, the state provides a rate of what that would be at the end of the payment, and it is per student.
And then you pay
And
that
then
to the parents?
Yes, and then, so
And
there's
in lieu of-
communication to and with the parents, and then if they are accepting of that and you are able to work that out to understand that it is impractical, then there has to be a board resolution for that to be enacted for us to make payment.
So then does it depend on what school they go to, or is it just any other school that they go to?
Christian, because we have enough students.
Right, so it's, once again, with the number of students that's going, and then that whole formula being deemed impractical. And I know Mrs. Thompson would have a lot more information about that.
Oh, I don't need I was just wondering.
Well,
I was
like
just
Troy
curious.
Christian, we transport to there.
Because you have so many
Like kids
students
that go
going
there.
that it makes sense for us to transport them.
So when it's the first time, or the first time in quite some time, they do a study and, they do actually, when the bus leaves, when the bus arrives, how many, minutes it takes, how many miles that they go, and then the number of students that's being transported, and then they do the cost per mile for the distance, and then the full estimated cost with, both the mileage, the maintenance, and the, personnel, and the number of hours, and then morning and afternoon, and then what that total cost would be.
If it's more than 30 minutes away during regular driving conditions, then
It doesn't make sense.
we don't have to, the state does not require us to.
Yeah. I think it's really great that we have a lot of talented kids in Tipp that have been accepted to Stivers. I mean, that's a big accomplishment. But, Yeah, I was just wondering how they figured out when we pay and when we start
I
traveling.
think they're with us tonight.
Right.
Is
and
that,
it's-
yeah, congratulations, that is
Congratulations.
truly, truly amazing.
This isn't your first year though at Stivers, been going, both of you have been going, right?
Yeah, that's a huge accomplishment, well done.
So Dr. Kump, when does it become an issue of $250, for instance, versus, you know, all of the kids that go to CJ, we just give them an RTA bus pass? So what's the deciding factors on differentiating that?
There was a special case that was worked with, through the district.
Okay.
And at that time, at the end, that was a piece that was determined through that final finding.
I'm talking about all the kids who currently go to CJ, they get an RTA bus pass versus
Well,
these
the-
people who are getting a monetary.
So we are to provide them transportation, but we can determine how that is done. So that means that we can get them to a point where an RTA bus is being serviced and that they can go from there. So that, in a sense, we are providing them transportation. It's just not our direct bus service is how that works.
So it's not limited to just a parent, it could be a service provider
Yes,
as well.
yes, it will.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I think we're ready for a vote.
Spano,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Ventures.
Yes, that motion is approved.
Item N, approval to amend policy 5430 previously approved on April 23rd, 2018. Policy number 5430 class rank will now state that grades will be weighted for this calculation and they will be phased in as per the agenda.
But we're not voting on this, are we?
This is the second read. This is considered a second read as per Neola advisement.
All right, so there's no motion to make, or,
I do have a
Oh.
question, based off of the two letters that we saw where, one, I think it was geometry was given a grade in the middle school and algebra was not given a grade in the middle school. Because I think in the letter it said geometry was considered honors, and so then it was calculated into GPA, but algebra would not. And so I was kind of wondering why those two, and how that would then affect, because those kids have started building their GPAs, the kids that are in that route. You know, they're reaching down into 7th and 8th grade to start building their GPAs. So I was just wondering why we don't allow, because I think algebra would be just as challenging. You know, why, like, are we gonna match those up?
So there were two letters, and so the revised letter does indicate that any class that is taken that is a high school course, even though some of them go to the high school to take it in a few cases, but for the most part, for example, algebra is able to be taken at the middle school because we have teachers that have the licensure that spans that. That if they take a high school course, that it will count toward their credits for graduating as well as toward their GPA. And that's
So then
what's
all
presently.
all the math that is gonna be counting towards their diploma will count in their
And
This
GPA.
is- that is the most recent incorrect.
That's
I
right.
have that,
We'll
are you
clarify.
listening, Mr. Weir?
I was, but I haven't been in those conversations with, I assume that's where we're headed with that, after you talked with Mr. Zink and Mr. Southers.
Yes,
So if you earn a credit, then you also get the GPA points as well.
that's right.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes. And
So
then
if you
it's
took algebra at the middle school,
for this year,
oh, so it starts with this graduating class, is that what you're saying?
it starts with the, I'll say the communication of the letter as is,
Okay.
that there was a time frame because for a few years now, the middle school students have been able to take high school courses if they were
Forever.
deemed ready
You've
for
always been
that.
able to, right.
So, and I guess it became more popular is what I would say.
Sure.
And so when it began to be phased in, there was a dilemma about whether middle school students were really ready to take a high school course and also have, in a sense, the consequence of it being in their GPA because they're younger and less mature than a high school student. So that was a discussion, and so in the earlier stages, that they would say they could, the first course would not count as far as their GPA, but the credit would. And that would allow them to take it and also to see if it was more than what they really were ready for, so that it wouldn't damage their GPA later. But it became very complicated about which is your first course you're taking, which is
Right.
your second. So
Yeah.
now, in order to keep it very consistent, because they even take an art class, sometimes at 8th grade, they're able to do that and use that for the high school, that they are indicating any high school course, any high school level course that's taken at the middle school level will count both for their credit toward graduation and toward their GPA.
Yeah, to me, that makes the most sense, because we can't keep changing it back and forth.
And it
People
gets
are gonna get
confusing very
confused.
quickly, and tracking each student in
Yeah,
their
how can we do
situation.
that? Doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense.
That's also consistent with College Credit Plus. which
Right.
Middle school students are able
Sure.
to take College Credit Plus.
Yeah, that's right, I forgot about that.
I did want to mention on the policy that, when it talks about the weighted grades, that College Credit Plus, of course, is in the weighted grades. If, once again, we offer the course at the high school as a weighted grade.
Do parents understand that? I mean, do they talk about that? Cause that's kinda yanky, you know?
We've explained that
Yeah.
quite a bit
Yeah.
at the College Credit Plus meeting in
Okay.
February on curriculum night,
Okay,
or late January, whenever it's gonna be this year.
yeah.
So yes, that is something that is explained to parents.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to adopt the policy, like, so this is the second reading, it's just like any other policy that we move.
Sure.
So, motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve. Sam and Teresa. Dave's gotta do some work on the,
I'm done.
oh, okay, well, we're ready for a vote.
Spano?
Yes.
Dunaway?
Yes.
Dahl?
Yes.
Heatherly?
Yes.
Ventures?
Yes. That motion is approved. Okay, that concludes new business. Next on the agenda, miscellaneous upcoming meetings. The next tri-agency meeting will take place Monday, September 30th, 2019, here at the Board of Education at 6:00 p.m. There'll be a work session at 6:00 on October 21st, 2019, again here at the Board of Education. This is to discuss survey results. That's absolutely not the case. We'll have something else on the agenda presumably. The next regular board meeting will be then at 6 p.m. on Monday, October 28th. Also here, of course. So, that concludes miscellaneous. Next is executive session. We've entertained a motion to adjourn to executive session for two purposes. One, to consider complaints against a public employee or official, and another to discuss evaluation of an employee or official. We've entertained a motion. All right, well, let me put on the record. Adjourn to executive session for purposes authorized under Board of Education Policy 0166 and ORC 121.22G1 to consider complaints on a public employee or official and to consider the evaluation of a public official. I do not anticipate any action following the executive session.
I'll move.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Corinne and Teresa.
Dahl?
Yes.
Dunaway?
Yes?
Heatherly?
Yes.
Spano?
Yes.
Ventures?
Yes, that motion is approved. So we'll take about a 5-minute break and
You ready for that?